We are back again with our Safer Gambling Talks, this time in a beautiful Prague, the mother of all cities, or at least it is being called by that. And we had the opportunity to attend a conference focused on a Czech gambling market. And we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be discussing with Eva Heringova, which acts as the group responsible gambling manager for Fortuna Entertainment Group. And we'll be talking about self-regulation and transition to regulation, but also about all things regarding responsible and safer gambling. So welcome. Hi, Eva. It's very good to have you here. I think it's fair to say that we just switched from Czech language to English.
Right.
So it might take us some time to remain fluent. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's nice to see you again, Šimon. Yeah, I'm well. We are just in the middle of Responsible Gaming Week here in Czech. We were actually met yesterday, right, during that international conference. And I'm happy that every year I can see that progress was made and more operators, more and more non-profit organizations are attending those weeks and that we can consult the importance of responsible gaming.
Perfect. Yeah, it is very obvious that such a week is currently happening, and it was a great opportunity for the two of us to meet and to have a conversation here in Prague. So we attended a conference yesterday aimed on responsible gambling in Czech Republic, which was very insightful, not even from the contribution from the locals from around, but also with international speakers and contributions from people like Simo Dragicevic or Mark Griffith. Can you tell me a bit more about this conference, how it started? Like, did you take any part in it?
Right. Well, I think we were all really happy that this could happen in Prague. It's fair to say that this is probably the first time that something that big was occurring. And yes, I think the biggest credit must be given to people from Institute for Gambling Regulation, because under them we are gathering with the other operators and we are cooperating on setting up the same standard within responsible gaming area. Yes, I think all the members of the biggest operators here in Czech participated. As you know, us, Fortuna, and then Tipsport, Chance and Saska, we are pretty much putting together 90% of Czech market. And yes, we were all participating in a way that we were inviting the speakers we had a chance to meet during some other previous conferences. Also, the moderator of yesterday's event was from Tipsport, Vašek Sochor, and I think he did a great job moderating both Slovak, Czech, and English speakers. And frankly, me and also my colleagues who attended, we were really surprised not only by the amount of great participants, but also by the quality of the organizations. Everything from the food till the content of the conference was just great.
Yeah, I can only agree with that. And also with the translations. So
Yes.
I've never seen that kind of a setup before. So if people weren't ready to be talking in English, they were able to speak in their mother language, if it was Slovak or Czech. And the translators were able to translate this for those speaking in English and vice versa. So it was very helpful. But I would like to take a step back and focus on you a little bit, because how it goes in these conversations, it's also and mainly about the people with who I'm speaking. So you are acting as a group responsible gaming manager now in the Fortuna Gaming Group?
Entertainment Group.
Entertainment Group, right. And you operate in 5 different countries, and you are in a role already for several years. But I'm curious, when I was looking in your LinkedIn, because that is commonly what I do when I am preparing, I realized that you were studying law, and you also did a postgraduate in a finance law.
Yes, that is correct.
So how did that happen? How was your transition to gambling?
Maybe at the beginning I will mention that the same background as me, actually the members of the Institute for Gambling Regulation have. Vašek Ulrich, he's my classmate from law school, and Dr. Jan Řehola, he's a couple years older, so he was actually, I think, graduating when I was still in first or second year. And I suppose the advantage of law school here in Prague is that you can basically profile what you want to do in the future by choosing several like voluntary or compulsory voluntary subjects. And I was always interested in a regulation. That's why I did both my master and doctor thesis on the financial topics. But I also had a lot of subjects, voluntary subject, oriented on psychology, sociology. I also had social deviations. And yeah, I suppose I always was interested in this. And that's after I graduated, I didn't go to any big law school, but I started to work in compliance department, firstly in a bank. Then I switched to investment company, and then I was hired by FEG.
Yeah.
I was actually originally hired to be the group compliance manager, but after several months, there was nobody who could lead the responsible gaming project, which was back then just beginning. And I was kindly offered by the previous CEO, Per Widerstrom, if I want to take it.
Right. Now, when you talk about it, I find it quite often that people either started in the compliance area and then moved to responsible gambling because when they've started, there was no responsible gambling role nor a department. And still in some companies, people who are taking care of responsible gambling are the ones who are taking care of compliance. That is directly connected with compliance. So how has your role changed back then? Because I can imagine that even before, some part of player protection or responsible gambling was there, even at the compliance role. So how did it change?
Well, I think it's the same with compliance in general. When I started to work in compliance, nobody actually in Czech Republic knew exactly what it is. And as you correctly mentioned, basically the teams in banks or in other big companies were consisted of either lawyers or it was people which came from the police, mostly working in AML areas because they had some experience with that.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes it was people who had studied psychology, etc. Now I can see that first compliance classes are being taught in some law schools or private schools, which is great. And I think it's the same with responsible gaming. We started with that 5 years back. And one of the reasons I was offered that position, frankly, was that there was nobody locally who could step in. And Fortuna was trying to hire somebody with experiences from abroad, ideally from UK, Gibraltar. But as the tender or as the interviews with the candidates went, there was still nobody suitable. And at the end, our CEO realized that I'm already doing it for 8 months. Frankly, my time was split amongst different compliance topics, but for me, RG was the most important. I really felt that this is something we should kick in and devote the most of time to that. And I realized that I'm just, as for the other compliance topics, I'm just doing it to fulfill the necessary obligations, but my heart goes to responsible gaming. And that's when I actually went to this position, started to learn about it. I had a consultant back then, Paul Foster from Crucial Compliance. He was previously, he was previously working in GVC, so he had a lot of experiences. I could always call him or write him when I wasn't sure about something. And I read heaps of studies from Mark Griffith, Maris Catania, and I tried to educate myself in my free time. And now I can see that finally the responsible gaming topic is resonating even here in Czech Republic. And I just hope that this will be taught more, there will be more classes on it. I can also imagine us operators supporting the academic studies as it is common in abroad, in the Western countries. And it's still, I think, missing here and we need to start with that.
Yeah, everywhere I go, I bump into Paul Foster.
Yeah.
It's, because I had a question on mind and I wanted to ask how you were feeling about that role. Because I remember when I was starting, and when I started, I didn't know much about gambling at all. And the task was, right, you have this project and you should run it and you should figure out how to do it. And I had no idea about responsible gambling as well. And there were times when I was quite anxious, trying to wrap my head around all that stuff that is going on. And even now, it's a very complex area.
Yes.
So you wouldn't be able, just to put out the sweet spot for formula that is just working in the responsible gambling. But it was good that you had some people to rely on and someone to call and ask.
Absolutely.
So now you are in a role for already more than 5 years.
Yes, it's
right?
about 5 years.
So what would you say is the importance of responsible gambling? Based on your insights, I mean, what impact can it have on the wider industry?
Beside the obvious fact that we should try to protect the people who are at risk, I think it also changes the perception of our industry, of what we do, because to put it bluntly, we are working in a sin business, the same as people in cigarette, tobacco, alcohol business are. And we have to put some countermeasures on the table in order to protect the people who are actually falling into addiction. They are at risk that they can develop some signs on it. And I feel that it's still fun and leisure for most of the people, but we cannot forget that not everybody is like the most of the people. Some people can get into a very difficult situation. And as it's common now for the big company who are earning a lot of money to devote certain percentage of their income to CSR topics, ESG topics, I think RG is the same thing. We should actually spend some of the money we earn, and we should protect those people who are not that fortunate, who might have fun at the beginning, but later on got into a difficult situation and they're spending more they could afford. So I think this is absolutely crucial for our business. And it also helps us to build out the sustainable business, because we will not lose those customers who cannot afford to be with us. We can, we can maintain the communication with them. We can slow them down when it's needed, and we can pretty much have them as clients for their whole life if they won't fall out into some dangerous patterns.
Right, yeah, to have a sustainable and ideally a legit industry, because really gambling is perceived as vice, at least, and easily be in those categories that you mentioned. So I'm not sure how it is with you, but for myself, Slovakia and Czech Republic is not that different. And every time I'm trying to explain someone what I'm doing, I would get these kind of frownings, like, oh yeah, you are with these guys. And sometimes it's quite difficult to be explaining the stuff that you do within responsible gambling. Is it the same for you? Did you ever had a difficult time explaining to your friends and relatives what you are doing, and that you are, sort of say, on the good side of that?
One of the good guys. That's a really good question, because I think a lot of people who work in this industry can be perceived as the bad guys. I had really nice and funny lunch with a woman from BI last week, and she said that she never thought that people will be asking her those questions, and she was very surprised that some family relatives asked her that. And for her, it was just business as any other business, and she's analyzing data. For her, it didn't matter if it's a data about how many people are playing this game, or if it's about how many apples are being sold in some supermarket. And she was really surprised about it, and that's why she kind of were looking how to explain to them that actually people, the operators, the gaming operators, are not altogether bad, because besides the fact that we have responsible gaming and we are supporting, some social topics, supporting the people with illnesses and stuff, we also, I think, are putting a lot of money back into sports. And I think for me, when I was explaining this, that I'm working in Fortuna, to my friends or family, their first reaction was more like, oh yeah, because nobody from my family experienced any harm. So it was more like, oh yeah, I remember those scratch cards we were buying in a post office, or yeah, Fortuna Liga, because we were sponsoring the first football league in Czech for many years. So I didn't have a negative reaction. But what I can say is that a lot of, especially young people who are coming to Fortuna looking for a job, they always ask this topic, what do you do for people who are developing addiction? And my HR colleagues confirmed that especially the younger generation, when they feel like repulsed by it, they would not take the job. And basically they said, sometimes we are selling the position by explaining what you do. That actually we have this responsible gaming program, and we are actually setting some boundaries for clients so they will not experience.
I can relate on that. Every time when we are hiring any position and there are people who are in their 20s, it's very important for them. It's very important to have the right purpose and have these like moral stuff cleared out. And from my perception, I also feel like that the upcoming generation of these people is very feasible for the sustainability strategies of online gambling. Putting the autonomy in the hands of these people, educate them so they would know the risks, they would know what they should expect with gambling, and they would know that there could be some harm which can appear and then what to do about it. So I have high hopes for the next generation of gamblers.
Likewise.
To be fitting into this category or into this format that we're trying to do. But let's get back to Fortuna. So I understand that their approach, or basically their strategy towards responsible gambling, has changed over the years. You holding the wheels and steering this campaign or this direction. So what has changed in the past few years? How has the approach evolved?
So we were beginning very slowly, because since we were the first operator which came up with this concept, the first worry of our business departments was that it will have a huge negative impact on our revenues. Because for somebody who never heard about responsible gaming, the first thing which comes to your mind is that somebody will be hassling clients, calling them, you have to immediately stop playing, you are going to lose your house. And my job was to patiently explain that it's not about it, explain the mechanisms we are trying to put in place, that it's more about actually finding that somebody is on the dangerous pattern before he develops addiction. That's the point of the system of early detection of risky behavior, and that we are actually really cautious about what we will be saying to our clients. So at the beginning, it was a lot about education before we could actually step into some development of tool or actually start to addressing the clients. So I would say the first year was really about educating our stakeholders that it's something we are going to do, that it might have some negative impact at the beginning, but it will bring us a long-term sustainability effect. At the same time, the first year, we were exchanging and collecting the data about our clients, so we will be prepared when we will be setting up that system of early detection. And after a year of preparation and education, we could finally start with developing the system. We identified several markers of harm which can be used in our market. We were drawing a lot from the markers of harm which are generally used in UK market, but we realized that some of it cannot be used because of the culture differences. I think it was quite good. It was, I think, one of the points yesterday during the conference, that some of the things are simply different. We had one marker of harm which was basically addressing or looking into clients when they were using credit cards a lot. Nobody does that in Czech. Most of the people use debit cards, or they are putting, they are doing the bank transfer. So we are trying to figure out what markers can be used. And when we had set about 12, 15 markers, we were starting to test it on a small sample of clients. And over the years, we were expanding that sample. And then we launched it for the first cohort of clients live, meaning that for the clients, let's say third of our portfolio, they were monitored by the system. And if somebody fall into the two highest categories, because we have a risk assessment of those clients, we send them a tailored communication. After that, we switched to second cohort. And then the last cohort were our VIPs. So they were going last. So I could persuade our business department that it will really not have a negative impact.
So from the start, you already jumped into this, looking into players' behavior, looking into markers of harm, calculating the risk, and then intervening, but rather say interacting with them without any requirement from the regulator. Yes,
it was purely our initiative. If you look to the regulation, it's similar like you have in Slovakia. What is written in the regulation is that you have to enable our clients to have some self-limiting measures.
Right, yeah.
But there is no rule, no obligation to have some system like that.
Yes, it would be like I would call it the bare minimum, but that is basically where most of the companies start. Like, we have our self-limiting tools available, either if it's like deposit limit or a loss limit, or a self-exclusion for our customers to use them. We won't be very pushy, right?
Yes.
Into telling them how to use it or why to use it or to use it right away, because might be afraid that they are going to lose some of their earnings, but that's like a bare minimum. And I hear it a lot from companies which are, I would say, mainly from the less regulated jurisdictions, that they are being like 100% respectful. If someone wants to set a limit, they are going to respect it. They are going to allow them to do it. They are going to safeguard it. Same would apply for the self-exclusion, but they wouldn't be no proactive steps because they would feel like it would be intrusive for the players. They would feel like that this could be something that the player doesn't want. So it could result in a negative connotation. And I know I can see how you are, your face expressions are, but this is the thing that I would be getting. So it's really admirable that without any kind of requirement, you jumped directly into this. So you were developing the whole thing, I guess, in cooperation with some of your colleagues or perhaps some external contributions, right?
Exactly. We were mostly using our BI team, and yes, we still had that external consultants back then. But after that, we just, were doing everything internally. And every year we are having this big revision and optimization of that program, looking to the markers which are bringing us the biggest hits, also revising the communication towards clients. It was the same approach back then. We started with very polite recommendations about you should set up a stricter self-limiting measures. Do you know that there is this option? And now I must say that we are allowing ourselves to be more proactive in a way that we are really putting into the text of our interactions. Do you know that almost 3% of people can develop addiction? We have this tool which triggered you might be the case. So we are already quite intrusive. On the other hand, I think you have to be if you want to trigger some reaction.
Yeah. Right. It sounds like a very good guidance for other companies that might be considering this, but rather say for other responsible gambling or compliance managers, because I think this is a very common story that you've described, that these kind of people would be pushing the agenda and trying to get a buy-in from their higher management. And it's not always that easy to convince them, right? But you were able to convince them. You were able to convince them that they shouldn't be afraid of having an proactive interactions with their players and trying to, get on this sustainable path and to have players who are spending lesser amounts of money, but for a longer time. So perhaps if you say one thing, why those responsible gambling managers shouldn't be afraid to run for such a campaign, and what perhaps should be their arguments that they should be using in order to get a buy-in? I think it might be very helpful.
Yeah, so first I have to stress out that in Czech Republic, actually all of the RG managers we have under the Institute for Gambling Regulations, they are all doing the same as me. We are lucky to actually that we were able to meet, and we have some, I think we will get to that later, but we have some common projects which where we cooperate. But yeah, as for the other people or other RG managers who don't want to launch it or are there waiting what the competition will do, I think we can all look to the UK market when there were these discussions for a very long time, but nobody took proactive step. And then the regulator stepped in and perhaps implemented some of the measures which were not ideal.
Yeah.
So I think this is something which can work as a big warning sign. Also, yes, exactly. Also for the board of directors and shareholders, because if we will not intervene and we will not self-regulate, there might be some stricter measures coming from the government, like mandatory amounts on deposits or total ban on any bonuses on new clients or deposit bonuses. And it's something which is not ideal, or some static rules, which also doesn't make sense, because every client has different situation, different income, different games which he or she likes. So I think it's always something where we will have advantage as operators, that we know the best what our clients want, what is their behavior. We see them since they joined our company, and it would be a shame to not use it for a greater good. Otherwise,
that's a very important message, I think, because I was a big fan of self-regulation like 3 years ago. Maybe it was like the initial naiveness if that is even the word. And I have put it into the Our campaign for global self-exclusion.
Yes.
And I have to say now that it didn't really work out. So I'm seeing it at many places, and there are exceptions, right?
Yeah, we were very supportive of that.
Yes, definitely. But to be able to get into a considerable group of operators and having a strong commitment from them, if you're going to develop this software, if you're going to develop this program, we are going to join it. That was very difficult. And perhaps that's not the best example, but if you look at it in overall, there are very few companies which are doing bold movements, bold changes, which are above what is requirement. I mean, your company and your example, or the example of the jurisdiction, that might be a difference. But in overall, you wouldn't see many companies which would change the status quo because they would feel like, okay, I mean, I'm doing, it is quite all right, the commercial is fine. Perhaps there is some harm happening, which I could be able to decrease. But what if the change that I'm gonna initiate is gonna be worse than my current status? And since the responsibilities are laying on CEOs, I think that personal kind of decision, it's very low incentivized. So I think it's very good to be pointing out on the fact that if you would not do it, there is someone else stronger with higher enforcement as a regulator who is going to do it. Yes. Most probably you're not going to like it.
Exactly.
Last year you won the award, Casino Guru Award, for the Social Responsibility Campaign of the Year. And you have already mentioned some of what was in the nomination. But can you describe why did you win it? Why Fortuna win this award?
Right. It's not, I hope it will not sound like a bragging or something, but I think the biggest decision point was that we indeed were the first one who actually addressed this topic. And in a way, we managed to onboard the other operators. But I must say that we really were surprised by the approach that the other operators from Tipsport, Chance, Saska took.
Yep.
And I must say that it was the first and so far the only project where all the operators could gather together and work on some common and same approach. We signed RG Code of Conduct and Memorandum of Understanding back in, I think, 2020, 2021 maybe, when we all committed to the same RG principles. We did it voluntarily. I think that because back then, we had a great CEO in place. We also have a great board of directors now. But back then, it was Per Widerström coming from Sweden. He was bringing that.
Right, it's a different kind of situation when it was kickstarting and now, right?
Exactly. And since Tipsport and Chance, they are local, they are working in Czech and Slovak market, they perhaps didn't have that pressure because it was something completely new. Since we are international and we have a lot of international members of board, we had more know-how and we were more like educating ourselves what could we do better. And that's why we decided that it would be great if we would start with that and manage to do that what didn't happen in many countries.
Yes.
To actually work on something together in some industry working group, that it would be great if we could actually align on the principles that make sense, that could potentially help our clients. We were overcoming some obstacles on the way, but I must say it was always like amicably solved. And we were not even able to agree on some GDPR principles, and it was directive in 2018. But here, in responsible gaming, we really managed to agree on it. And as Fortuna, we were trying to make it easier in a way that we provided the researches and the analysis of data and the markers of harm we identified that could work to the group,
right,
so the others could benefit from it. And we also agreed that we will validate it using some independent authority, which in our case is the National Institute for Mental Health. So those are the people who are basically treating the the players which have the biggest problem. And they are using the questionnaires and they are using the interviews with them to validate whether the markers can work.
Right. So the markers of harm and the evaluation formula, so to say, which you have developed, you've shared with the group,
Yes.
and you agree that they are going to be applying that as well. So it's a great example of the self-regulation in practice, that even though it is not required by the regulation, that everybody who is part of the group has agreed that they are going to be using it to identify their players and stop the gambling-related harm. And so what came next? Because you were pretty active with the association and with the group of operators here in Czech Republic. So how did it continue?
Right. So when we signed the RG Code of Conduct and the memorandum, we indicated that certain timeline in which all of us will have a system of early detection. All of us will interact with customers. We committed ourselves to responsible marketing, etc. We also agreed that we will be independently audited by Deloitte, which is great because we know that the other competitors are actually doing what they committed themselves to do.
Right, yeah.
And now I think that time is slowly going to end because I think we had 2 or 3 years to develop it. Obviously, we knew everybody is in different starting positions. That's why we indicated, I think, 2 or 3 years for every operator to develop a system. And on a way, the decision was made that the ideal situation would be if we would have the common system, or at least using the same markers, same logic everywhere. Because the biggest fear was that we will, for example, be very strict, suspending marketing to clients, bombarding them with interventions, and then they will close the account, they will go to the competitor because perhaps they will be not that strict and they will be just doing it on a side to look good. So I think that's how the idea came into place, but also we figure out that it would be the best approach because I think we have to apply the same measures across the whole market in order to really protect the customer. Exactly for those things. So it will not happen that some operator will ban him and he will immediately play somewhere else. So at the moment, we are developing the system which will be working for all of us. Every company had one SPOC, which was sent to these cross-industry working groups, most the data analysts, because they were going through the data.
Spock, right?
Exactly. Yeah. SPOC indeed, with the logic.
Right.
And yes, and those people are developing the markers which we would like to use. And now what would be the biggest step which would be helpful is if we could share those data, because now we have to do it anonymously. And so we proposed to the members of parliament, that was done through the Institute for Gambling Regulation, that we would like to have a legal ground to share this data. We got a great support from the members of parliament, but they said the Data Protection Office has to issue its approval that it can happen. And I would say the same way as some of the banks are exchanging data about AML, we would like to exchange data about the people who we see as they are at risk.
Yeah.
So we can actually apply the common ban, or we can, watch for those people, put them to watch list. So we know, okay, he spent that much money in our competitor, so we better watch on him.
Right, yeah. So single customer view
Exactly.
in Czech Republic.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Currently, the trial is happening in the United Kingdom.
Yes, I'm very curious about that.
Me too. I compared with how many operators are there or how many brands are there, it would be just a handful of operators that are running the trial. And I can imagine that it might be very difficult for the big market as UK is.
Yeah.
So it's good to take advantages from the smaller markets and run it over here. So I'm looking forward for this, that it be implemented in a law, and then the Czech Republic will be able to run the single customer view for this.
I think that's a very good point. That we actually, the big advantage which we have is that we are a small country with 4 huge operators. So as I mentioned, we are putting together 90% of the market, and we are 4 of us. So you can always agree or do some compromise when there are only 4 of us on a table.
Right.
Must be much more difficult in UK.
And so you were saying that it would encompass like 90% of the market?
Yes, we also obviously offered other smaller companies to join this initiative. So let's see how it will be with the newcomers, such as Betano or Kingsbet, because they are not on the market for that long.
Yes.
But yeah, for us, Tipsport, Chance, Fortuna, Saska, we are full in. So yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking is that when not everybody is on board with the safe regulation measures, then it is difficult to put something into practice, because then the group that has agreed on something will feel like, okay, so we would agree, again the word agree, that we are going to be doing more in the responsible gambling. So thus decreasing some of our earnings, perhaps not to expose ourselves or not to expose players that much to the gambling opportunity. But if there are others which can do it, there would be this afraid of losing the competitive advantage on the market, and perhaps to get to the point when the market share is going to move. So it's a very favorable situation that you have this 90%.
You're right.
And yeah, it would be a very nice story if the rest would follow up as well. But I can see, because in online gambling, I think that no discussion regarding responsible and safer gambling should be without the consideration of the commercial interest. You just cannot put it away from it. So it's ideally right to find a setup which is fulfilling one and the others as well. But there is one more thing which I remember that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you agreed as an association that you're going to implement, and that was the panic button.
Yes, but to be perfectly honest, this is something which came up with the new regulation. So I cannot take a credit on it that, it's something which is definitely desirable. I'm in favor of that, but this actually is regulatory obligation.
Right, but before, did each of you use your own panic button?
We committed to have cool down button or panic button, yes. Also, there are some other options which I'm trying to now put in place, that now we have a panic button, but I would also like to introduce, it's called scheduled breaks. So it's not like you are pressing the panic button right now when you feel you are at risk, but you can plan ahead. For example, if you know you are going out to party and you know that when you have a few beers, you are inclined to bet more than it's wise, then you can use the scheduled break, which is self-exclusion in advance for a certain period of time. So yes, we all committed to do something like that. Tipsport had cool down button. Yeah, now we have all panic button. I'm trying to have these scheduled breaks soon. It's in a pipeline. So yes, that's... And
the way how it works now, which I am thinking only about one country, and I might be wrong. I'm not covering all the countries, but the other country where it works like this is in Germany.
Yes,
and now, since it's part of the regulation, when someone press a panic button in one operator, they are excluded. Basically, they're unable to access their accounts in every operator licensed in that country, right?
Yes.
And for how long they are going to be?
It's 48 hours. That's the first timeline. But after that, you have to get an offer to self-exclude for longer. But then it's actually a reference to the list of excluded persons which are administered by the Ministry of Finance. So it's 48 hours. But if you feel that it wasn't enough or that you are in a bigger troubles than you thought, you can put yourself on that list, and you have to get an instruction from any operator which you currently are signed in.
Right, yeah, it makes sense. And now get back to those scheduled breaks. What made you to focus on that? What was the reason?
Well, I'm currently looking for what we could improve within our responsible gaming program. And one thing is the detection. Second thing is the intervention. So besides targeting clients who we feel they are at risk, I think we should also offer the widest choice to people to actually not get into risk. So in Czech Republic, we have quite a lot of self-limiting measures, which are also ordered by law. As I mentioned, we are working in 5 countries. When I look to Romania or Croatia, when I'm cooperating with my colleagues, it's only necessary to have deposit limits and some option to self-exclude. In Romania, no other limits. So in that country, we worked together to introduce the loss limit, because I think it's very important one. So you actually set up how much you can afford to lose. And then I was looking to all the other markets, like what could be introduced so it would make the customer journey better. And when I read the study about the schedule break, I really like it. Firstly, I think it was mostly developed or proposed by some addictologists because of the people who are lonely. That I think the first idea came up with the fact that a lot of people, when they are spending a Christmas lonely at home or Easter holidays, they might be frustrated and they might be looking for escape by playing games online and losing a lot of money. But then it also showed up that it's a great tool for people who are going to a party or going to get drunk or something like that. And I thought this is a great option which to offer to our clients, because we are offering them the tool or mitigation matter they can use. And if they feel they are okay, fine. But I think for a lot of people who are still under control, it can help them to maintain the healthy habit and to just play for fun.
Right. Yeah, the reason why I was asking is that I was in a conversation before, and it was an operator, and they came across an issue that someone was pressing the panic button every time. I think it was like once or twice a month, every time during the weekend, 24 hours. And for them, it was like the possible marker of harm. So they were engaging with the person and they were trying to figure out, okay, so you might have some troubles with, and the result was that there was no issues. The person just wanted to block themselves during the weekends because for the same reason that you just described.
I love that.
So I feel like that us, working in the industry, and also the players can be falling into a trap of a problematic gambling, or rather say into a labeling or categorization. Some people as having difficulties with gambling, when it is like the contrary, right? Is the other way around. And the reason why I wanted to broad it's that I wanted to ask you regarding the stigma which could be laying, or which is laying on the responsible gambling measures and problem gambling. No one wants to really be labeled as a problem gambler. So what is your opinion? How to get rid of this stigma and how to have the usage of perhaps such a tools like that scheduled break as a normal part of gambling behavior?
What I like about the conference yesterday was that it gathered together a lot of people from different industries. And one of the speakers was Jana Šatankova from a non-profit organizations we cooperate with. And she said yesterday, and some of the people were laughing, that she feels that all the clients who are calling are super happy that they finally have somebody to talk to about their problems. And I could see how we are living in a different worlds, because we are actually referring our clients to, when they are calling to a helpline, to get help. And when they are consenting, we can immediately connect them to this non-profit organization, which is a great addition to our approach. But I must say, only few of them agree, maybe because of that stigma, because they feel now they want to connect me to the addictologists. They might be worried that it's so bad with me. So we feel somebody really impolitely refuses, or they are being mean to us. And I think it's all just fear, exactly as you mentioned, that they are being stigmatized or watched.
Yeah.
And to her, or to the therapists which are working under her, they only get the clients who already are seeking help actively, which is great. And they welcome the opportunity to talk with somebody who is trained to do that and can provide a relevant advice. And I think we should be more proactive in a way that it's absolutely normal. Ask for the self-limiting measures without a question. Like I think I like to bet occasionally. I've set up a self-limiting measures. I think it's absolutely normal to do. And when using it, I think we who work in a betting and gaming industry, I see responsible people who do that. And it's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. And if I'm calling and looking for help because I feel that I'm losing control, again, I think it's super responsible to do that. And we should be working on the awareness that it's actually a brave thing to do. Also for the friends or relatives who feel that somebody from the family is at danger. Also, they should be talking about it more. And I think we all have to be spreading the awareness more, that it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually a very responsible thing to do.
Right, yeah, to normalizing. It might sound weird, but recently I came to a phrase like to normalizing harm in gambling. I was recently in a discussion which was about like the difference or the transition from the entertainment to addiction, or basically these two poles in gambling. And we were discussing, when you are going out drinking, you are basically counting with some amount of harm. Right? You know that if you will be drinking too much and you will be having a good time, you know that you're going to pay for it the next day. So the harm is there and you should count with it. And it's kind of even difficult to be like ashamed of drinking. It might change. The perception is changing now when more and more people are realizing that the drinking is inherently harmful, also in lower doses, but the harm is there. But with gambling, normal approach is that no harm is going to happen to me. I'm not addicted. I'm not that kind of a person. So why should I care? But if we will get up in a situation like when you gamble, you could spend more than you wanted, even though you don't have to be on a scale of problem gambling. You don't have to be, far right as a problem gambler, but you might spend a little bit too much time gambling, or you might spend a little bit more, and if you can prepare for it. What is your opinion about it? Because there is still so much that we can do as a part of responsible gambling to decrease it. So what is your opinion on the entertainment versus addiction in gambling?
So, yeah, I think maybe it's also because in the environment where we live in, that I'm from Czech Republic, you're from Slovakia, and it's more normal to drink than in some other countries. Actually, I think sometimes we have the opposite reaction when I go to a pub and I don't want to have a beer.
It's even required.
Yes.
It's like you have a problem if you're not drinking.
Exactly. So it's a little bit difficult because alcohol is generally accepted in our countries. But yeah, and maybe that's why gaming seems something abnormal, because not that many people. It's not something you do widely, and it's also like not what you do in a pub or a bar. But I think a lot of people. I think there are so many people who occasionally gamble, and they don't even say it's gambling. You go to watch horses, and you even take your kid and say, what horse do you like? Oh, this one, the brown one. So let's put 100 on it, and if we win, I will buy you a lollipop. It's something, and it's something to put in an extreme measure. You are actually encouraging your kid to gamble. No, you are encouraging him to have fun. If he loses, you should teach him, well, now we spend the money, we cannot anymore. Or you should be actually like working with the mind, actually setting up boundaries. I think that's why you teach now financial grammar in a basic school and high school. Also, there is this project that you will be teaching kids about gambling and gaming, because a lot of kids game and they're spending money on buying stuff in computer games. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is that really for 97% of people it's fun. And we cannot make them scared of it. We just have to explain that it can be dangerous. There are some mitigations you can implement before to not lose control, and basically just go with it, because gaming was here and gambling was here from medieval times, and it will always be here.
Right. And I find it so difficult to be explaining this to I'm going to say like ordinary people who do not have that kind of insight and whose perception is basically limited to only negative effects of gambling. But I'm glad that you brought up the example with your kids or with kids, because I think, there is a research, or there is like the proven scientific approach that the undeveloped brain shouldn't be exposed to gambling, because it can create those unhealthy patterns in their brain. So they would be more sensitive, or more like the chances for them to be developing some sort of addiction is higher. I get that. The brain is developing. But as a matter of fact, I think it's impossible to eradicate risk-taking of the childhood and of growing up. So take, for example, the trading cards. Now everybody speaks about loot boxes,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
I get
yes,
it.
yes.
It is gambling. But if you take example of the trading cards, it's the same. It is just not in an online environment. I get what the online environment is doing, the exposure, the volume, the speed. You can spend much more than you would be buying Pokemon cards or something. But I remember it from my childhood, how excited I was when I was opening the pack of Pokemon cards. And how excited is my son when I buy him Pokemon cards. And he's 6 years old. And I don't think that he gets really that kind of uniqueness of the cards and that specific like value of the cards. I'm the one who is looking at the cards which are there if there is anything strongly valuable. But what I'm trying to say is the part of life, and then what is the difference between the risk taking and gambling, right? I mean, in every gambling there is risk taking, and kids, they love to take risks. I'm going to climb the tree because there's excitement in it, and it involves the whole rewarding system in our brains that is being done by gambling. The dopamine stuff and that. So what I'm trying to say by this, thinking about the question towards this.
I think what you try to say, and I'm on the same page, is that there are so many things which makes us happy and brings pleasure, but you have to have some limits. And it's the same with sugar. It's the same with gaming, gambling. It's the same with even if you over-exercise, you can hurt yourself. I think it's always good to find the right middle way to be happy, but to not get fanatical. And I think it's equally bad if you feed your child with sugars, hamburger and donuts every day. Then if I have 10-month-old son and I already took him to horse races and I really don't think I'm a bad mom and I'm that he will develop an addiction.
He won't remember it for sure.
Well, he was very excited though.
And also the fact that the special thing about online gambling and the exposure of it and the accessibility of it, you cannot really close these, let's call them young adults, in a silo. So they would be able to find out the gambling opportunities somewhere if they would be embracing Web3, cryptocurrencies or blockchains and the whole tokenization thing, which is very appealing for children.
Yes.
And they would want to engage it because it's part of, or it's gonna be part, it's part of the culture and it's part of trend. For me, I would rather lean on the part of education, even though these people are not already 18 years old, but to explain what is happening and what could happen to you if you're gonna engage in it too much.
Yes. And I also think it's good to mention that we are talking here as legal providers who are actually implementing all those measures and spreading the awareness about it. And as we know, you mentioned, when we are all working now in an online environment, it's so much more accessible to find some game online to play. And there are so many illegal providers. I would be more happy and safe if my relatives or myself would be playing on a website of a licensed provider who offers all that than to just, leave them be, because kids or people who wants to gamble, they will find a way eventually.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's so much better to play with somebody who actually is taking the responsibility seriously. Like what we do in Fortuna, for example, when we really find a person who is in trouble and getting in touch with us and finding the help, I have agreement with our general manager that we will be financing their legal costs or their filling up for insolvency, for personal bankruptcy. So we are or even like covering some rent temporarily. We are definitely not offering money back, which a lot of clients are asking, because I would be worried they will just immediately put it back to the game. But we are trying to offer them a helpful hand. And I cannot imagine that this approach would be taken by some illegal provider. So I think sometimes we should be, as a license provider, we should be getting a little bit more credit, because gambling will be still with us. We are trying to make it more fun and safe. And I think the biggest problem are those companies who are illegal and they don't care a damn what the client is, how old is he, and whether they are just ruining their life or not.
Yeah. Yeah, so you cannot put gambling in a box and just lock it and to remain it there.
Exactly.
We are getting to the end of our discussion because we are running out of time, but I wanted to focus on some specific initiatives. So there are a lot of safer gambling or responsible gambling initiatives that are around there happening on a smaller or larger scale. So which of these would you say has the most meaningful impact on protecting customers?
So I definitely think that one of the things is to apply the standardized approach across the market. We talked about it for a while now. And I think it's good to actually support the academic sphere, meaning that I think really the scientists, the addictologists, psychiatrists working in respected universities can provide such a good insight for us operators that we can really tweak our systems and approach to the clients in a way that it would be useful. Yesterday, when we heard from Mark Griffith about some recent researches, some of the results were surprising. Like you expect, I developed or I came up with such a great solution, and then you find out based on the studies that it might be not actually the best solution. So I think we will have to focus more here in CE to support these academic studies to actually figure out what could be helpful towards the clients who might be at risk or even general portfolio of clients to have fun with us. I should name some initiatives specifically. I will come back to the responsible gaming weeks because I think that's the time when everybody is focusing solely on this issue. We are not promoting any marketing materials in this week. Also, a lot of countries who are actually not that developed in the responsible gaming areas, they are still at least promoting that there are some addictologists and some groups available for clients who feel they need it. So I think this is super important because we are spreading the awareness this way.
That's a very good point. And it's interesting that now almost every jurisdiction has their own responsible gambler or safer gambling week. And I think it's very important because then it is localized. As you've been saying at the beginning, that there are nuances in every culture and every country that are just there and they need to be addressed and they need to be used in order to, fulfill just to make things work. I was just asked by a colleague this week that, they are texting me from Saska that it is the responsible gambling week, but we have a responsible gambling week in 2 weeks. I'm confused.
Yes, when you mentioned it, we have a Poland as one of our markets, and they don't have any casino games, and that's why they are perhaps applying a little bit softer measure towards the clients. However, they are holding responsible gaming every week. They are branding their retail because I think the most dangerous thing which they have now are virtual games, which are actually allowed in Poland. So they are having the responsible gaming week there, even though that perhaps the online business is not that exposed as would be if they would be offering the wide choice of casino games. And it's great because they are targeting it to the Polish mentality, Polish players, and it works.
Right. Yeah, I think that we should end on this positive note. So I thank you very much for this fruitful conversation. We drifted into subjects that I didn't really intended to, but it was just the natural result of our talks, which I appreciate very much. Because it is supposed to be like that. Sometimes it might be something which we are not really prepared for and we are not completely professionals, for the studio and stuff. But I hope that's fine.
I think we are being honest.
Yes. And hopefully it's going to be translated better for the audience as well in the same way. So thanks again. I'm glad that you are able to find time in this busy week. I know that you have a tight schedule and you have to attend places. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And hopefully I will have the opportunity to see you again soon, either in some conferences or when I'm traveling to Prague again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Great.